This is Georgie from Teacher's Friend, and I am here with the incredible Char, and we are here to talk about her experience teaching English abroad, but also what she's ended up doing with her life afterwards. So, welcome, Char.
Hello.
So, Char, could you tell us a little bit about, first of all, what made you decide to do a TEFL course in the first place, and how did you end up doing it?
Well, I was in a career in higher education. I was an not an administrator, an advisor for engineering college over at the University of Wyoming. And I was working on getting a English as a second language teaching certificate, a graduate teaching certificate. And the pandemic hit, things were starting to go crazy. I had been working from home for about a year and a half. And
Wow.
when things kind of slowed down a little bit and we were starting to get back into the office, that's when I realized it was time for me to kind of jump ship and actually try and do what I had been trying to do for the past 2 years. So I had gotten an English graduate certificate, teaching English as a second language graduate certificate, but decided that I wanted to actually get another certificate. It was called the Fast Track through Destination TEFL because they had a job guarantee. So basically, roundabout way of saying, I was in a job, I really enjoyed the job, but I wanted to travel and I knew that I'd always wanted to try and teach English. So I took the opportunity when the opportunity presented itself, and finally jumped off and went and did it.
That's amazing. And I think one of the really interesting things is that there's so many people that do TEFL, and we get a lot of people that have already been teachers that have teaching experience. And then we get a lot of people that have never taught in their life, that have never walked into a classroom. So I think that's something really interesting, that it can be for people that have taught before, and it can be for people that have like, teaching what? And they've never done it either.
Yeah, and a big part of getting a TEFL certificate abroad or having somebody help you abroad is getting through that transition. So it's not just the training piece of it that a lot of people think is the thing that they really need, but more so it's the back end piece of helping get transition from where you are living to where you're going to be living teaching abroad. So that was the big thing for me, was being able to have help in that transition. And it wasn't just an academic transition, it was a cultural transition, it was a language transition, it was a big transition all around. So
I think that's a really good thing about doing your TEFL face-to-face abroad, even if you go into online, because when you arrive, you go into a class full of people that are all like 9 to 5, going to be with you. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, look at this, look at that. Isn't this crazy together? They're going to go on this journey with you. Whereas if you get qualified at home and then you move abroad, you're kind of doing it on your own, and you've not got that kind of support system that you have when you do the TEFL abroad.
that was a big reason why I chose to do that second TEFL certificate too, because I had the in class experience of the graduate certificate, but I didn't actually have the moving abroad experience and the cultural transition experience of being in a different country and learning in a different country, and alongside also learning different cultures in a different country, a different language. And so while the academic piece was great to have, it's almost even better to be able to learn that in a different country while you're where you're planning on teaching as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the teaching, because I think a lot of people, promote like, come and do a face-to-face TEFL. It's going to change your life. You're going to have this amazing time. But they don't focus so much on like the fact that it is quite intense and it can be a steep learning curve. And especially when you're in a new country and you're studying for the first time. So obviously I'm not wanting to put anybody off, but I think it's important, to know all the facts and to know that it isn't just a walk in the park, so that when people actually come, they're not left thinking, oh my gosh, everybody else says they've had the best time ever, and I'm kind of struggling. So what could you tell us about your experience on the course from the beginning to the end, and kind of your journey?
I came in freshly graduated from a master's degree where I got a 4.0, thinking that I was going to be, the best student. And I was sorely mistaken, because I think that I went in with one idea thinking that this was going to be more of a like traditional learning style type of training. And there were a few assignments that just threw me off, that I felt like I like wasn't prepared for. But I think that was actually the good thing, because in teaching a lot, you get thrown a lot of kind of curveballs that you don't get to prepare for. In fact, when I got my job, every single day for me was a curveball. And so being able to go through that experience without knowing exactly what was going to go on or exactly what was happening each and every step of the way was actually a good thing. And it helped me build that resilience for when I did end up going and teaching later on down the road.
I
And I
think
think
it's
that
sorry, I was gonna
over,
say I don't think it's
no, it's
just you
okay.
that had that experience. We get a lot of people that have taught before or done degrees in teaching, and they're like, what is this? Like, this is not
Yeah,
what I was expecting. And I think they almost have like a bit of an identity crisis because they're like, oh yeah, I'm a teacher, I'm doing a teaching course, it's gonna be, they're gonna learn something, but it's gonna be easy. And then they're like,
yeah.
this is not easy. What do you think was some of the differences between, so you said it was a very practical one, a very practical course compared to what you were used to. What do you think was also maybe some of the things that you learn about the practical side of the teaching, or that you didn't know before that you weren't expecting?
Well, in the graduate certificate, I learned a lot about how people acquire languages, how children acquire languages, and somewhat about how adults acquire languages. But then when I got to the training course, that all was put into practice. So mostly the theory that I was learning in the graduate certificate was basically, put into practice head on. And I was able to kind of figure out, okay, well, I learned all of this theoretical framework and I learned how people acquire like languages, but then to actually put that into practice into like a methodology and put lesson plans together that would actually get people to acquire languages, slowing my brain down enough to look at the step by step and be able to scaffold those steps into acquiring a language was something that I thought that I had, but then I got there and realized, okay, there's a million different ways that you could do this. And Georgie's way and the way that I was taught by Georgie is one way. And then I was thinking of another way, but then we were able to come together and figure out how to mesh those two. And I think that that was really beautiful because I'm kind of like this stubborn learner where it's like I try to see it one way and it's hard to get me to change my mind, but you are such an excellent teacher that you're like, no, it can be done this way and this is a good way also. So I enjoyed having that, like, kind of a little bit of a challenge to the way that I had that expectation set, and it opened my mind a lot broader than what I had thought I had in my theoretical
Mm-hmm.
framework.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I always push people, like, if you have the time, if you have the money, do face to face, because sitting and reading about how to teach, it's just not going to cut it basically, like, because there's just
Yeah.
so much that you learn when you're in the classroom and when you're actually like physically like doing it. But I remember there was a moment, I will never forget this moment, Char, with me and you. And I remember when we were like sat across from each other and you said to like, yeah, well, and I was like, Georgie, you are the teacher. You have to take the moral high ground. She is the student. Breathe. And you were getting it. I think you were overwhelmed and you were just like, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So what do you think you were finding frustrating in that moment? And again, how did that kind of shape your overall learning experience? And if you can't remember, you can just talk in general. I just remember, yeah, like you said, I had to be the one that was like, okay, how can we repicture this? Because I could see you had got the headlights on and you were like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not what I know. This is not what's familiar. I don't think and you were spiraling. And I was like, okay, we've got to get her out this spiral.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there was being able to give me that different framework without yelling at me or without like trying to force it down my throat. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit, it's hard for me to change my mind. I'll be the first to admit that I do not like changing my mind. And especially when I think I know something, like, now
Mm-hmm.
wait a second, I don't want to think about it in this different way. And the way that you explain things and the way that you were able to kind of break it down for me in the sense that you thought that I needed was incredible. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had a teacher in my life that has been able to actually look at the circumstance that they have in front of them or the student that they're trying to teach in front of them and say, okay, what is it specifically that's bothering them, what is it specifically that they need information from me for, to be able to look at this perspective or to look at this from a different angle. So the way that you kind of personalize that interaction was really valuable to me because for most of my education, it was all cookie cutter. It wasn't very
Mm.
personalized. And so having you take the time to truly try and understand where I was coming from was so valuable. And I think that was one of the biggest things that helped me move forward, because it was like, oh, actually, no, she does care about what I'm learning, and she does know that these things actually do work, and she's trying to get me to see a different perspective rather than just try and fight me on it the whole way. And you acknowledge that I do have value in the education that I brought to the table. It's just not that
Oh, for
it wasn't
sure.
that it was
Yeah.
wrong or anything. It wasn't
Yeah.
that it was wrong at all. It was just that you're trying to get me to see a different perspective, and I was like so hard-headed.
And I think the thing that's really nice about this whole journey and this whole process is that now expanding out, and I'm going to go and offer curriculum to schools that goes like beyond what I've taught the students initially. And I've now come to you and been like, sure, like I'm going to build this curriculum. Like, what ideas do you have based on your experience? Because I've never worked in like a state school. I've always been doing like ESL. I've always taught abroad. So I think that full circle of like going to each other and understanding that both people have different perspectives is the beauty of TEFL, and like doing a TEFL and finding these opportunities and meeting these people.
100%. And it was that interaction that we had initially that really built that foundation, I think, big time.
Yeah. And then again, we'll briefly touch on it because we've gone into it a little bit already. But I remember, so I was on a date. So this was like, by the way, I've been with this guy for a year and a half now. I'm in love with him. And he's with me here. It was my first date ever. It was like a weekend. It was Saturday or it was Sunday. And we're like just about to sit down for food. And my phone is like going off. And you called me just like, I think you were pretty much like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. I'm
I
leaving.
was crying in the middle of
Yeah.
a cafe.
And
Yeah.
I was on the phone to him like, I know this is really rude. Like, do you mind? Like, my student's having a meltdown. Like, can I like pick up the phone? Bless him. He was like so good about it. He was like, yeah, it's fine. And I was still talking to you, but I'd be like, while I'm like talking to you. So yeah, talk a little bit about that and how you got past that. Let's maybe compare, because I think we've talked about how like you learn and you grew, but maybe compare how you felt in that phone call and how you felt when you graduated and got the certificate.
It's a night and day difference, Georgie. Honestly, I remember that. I remember that distinctly. In fact, I didn't know that you were on a date. I feel so much worse now. I think
Oh,
you might
did
have
I
told
never
us, but
tell you that? That's hilarious.
you
Yeah.
probably did. But I was in meltdown mode, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to talk to somebody. And
I don't
Georgie
care.
said that I could call her. So
I did
yeah,
say
no.
that, and you can always call me. So there we go.
And the one time that I'm going to use it, it's like you're on a date. So silly. But yeah, no, I remember that distinctly. I was sitting at a cafe on the beach in Sanur. I was trying to get this lesson plan done. It was the very first lesson plan that you had assigned to us, and it was unlike any lesson plan I've ever done. And I remember, you gave us the entire framework of what we needed, but for some reason my brain was telling me that I couldn't do it. My brain was saying
Yeah.
this is too hard,
That
and
happens a lot. The overwhelm
it's
is real.
yes, and it's not matching up with the information that you currently have. And I was so worried about the expectation that you have, because I'll admit I'm a perfectionist. I want to have that straight A. I want to have those good grades, and so
Oh my gosh,
I was
Char, so
thinking,
just
well,
interrupting. I've just made a quiz. And on this quiz, it's like which TEFL's right for you. It's like, are you a perfectionist? Because perfectionists like struggle. And I'm like, you just gotta let it go.
yeah,
Sorry, carry
yeah,
on.
big time. That big time. That was one of the things that through this experience I was able to pretty much completely let go. It's been a night and day change for me, and this experience was something that really pushed me forward. I think that a lot of the times perfectionism and people who are like caught up in perfectionism like it because it's what's familiar to them. And so trying to change that behavior is really, really hard. And sometimes you have to have a challenging experience to help you move through that change. And that's exactly what this was for me. I was sitting in this cafe and I was really worried about what I was supposed to put in my lesson plan. And I was really worried about the different requirements that you had set out for us. And I wanted to make sure that it was perfect the first go around. And I was putting such high stakes on this. And I was like, I had to call you because I couldn't even get a sentence out on the paper. I couldn't even comprehend what the objective was. Like I couldn't the brain just was not working. And I was sitting in this cafe, and it was busy. There was a buffet going on. I was sitting right next to the buffet, and so people were lining up next to me, and I am just like, oh, tears were going. They were welling up, and I was overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I gotta call Georgie. I need to figure out, what she wants from this. I need to figure out what exactly that she needs me to put down on this piece of paper. And I
Because I
I just
think you
remember you
texted me
saying,
and you were like, I'm struggling. Can we have a call? I was like, sure. And then I pick up the phone, you're like, and I was like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
oh, okay.
it's like that.
I was like, okay. I was like, okay, Stephen, you're gonna have to just wait a minute for this date. So just putting the pause on the date.
Classic, play it cool and then have a meltdown.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, can we
But
have a quick chat? And I was like, cool, it's okay.
yeah,
It's okay.
yeah, no, and I just remember you being so gracious and kind to me throughout that conversation, and you just kind of repeated to me, Char, it's not that big of a deal. It's really not. You can put down whatever you need to put down. If it's wrong, we'll address it. If it's wrong, then we'll get it later. Nothing that in fact, I think you even said nothing that you put down is wrong because it came from your brain and you're smart, and you kept trying to encourage me and say that, look, whatever you put down, it's going to be okay. This is a low stakes assignment. It's not the end of the world. It's going to be all right. You got this. You're smart. Keep going. And I'm like, okay, Georgie thinks I'm smart. So clearly I got this.
Oh, that
uh,
makes me feel better. Yay.
but
That's nice to hear.
it's a big like combination of that perfectionism versus imposterism. And when you're doing something for the first time that you're unfamiliar with, and you're all alone, and you're in a different country, and and even though this you might be sitting in a cafe on the beach and it's really beautiful, it's like sometimes your head can really play tricks on you. And having an instructor that is there for you to be able to encourage you and say, hey, look, this is not life or death. Put down something. You've got this. Keep going. I'll check it when we get done, or check it tomorrow when we're all set, but don't put your whole life on this. It is okay. Just do your best. And that changed the game for me. That changed the game. I think that calmed me down a lot. And even throughout the rest of the course, it was like, okay, I don't I don't have to write an entire thesis in this lesson plan. It's just an objective. And it can be something so simple, but my brain had a way of overcomplicating things in that time that I think it just got the best of me. And I'm just so thankful that you were there to be able to say, look, you got this, you're smart. Whatever you put down, it's gonna be all right.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to this whole like doing the face-to-face TEFL, having the community, having like the tutor, because otherwise people end up getting like maybe an online TEFL that's like not particularly comprehensive, and then they walk into a classroom and then they're like, oh my gosh, I just relocated my life and I don't know what I'm doing. And for some people, they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, they can wing it. And then for other people, they're like, no, that's why I put together this quiz, and it kind of asks people like how confident you feel with classroom management, like how confident are you a perfectionist, like do you prefer online or face-to-face study? And I've also added in a question about like, are you okay with intense study? Or would you rather like sit and process? So I'm excited. I'll send you my quiz so you can give me some feedback. It'd be interesting to see what answer it gives you as to like which one would be the best option for you. Okay, so I'm going to move on a little bit from the TEFL, because what I'd love you
Sure.
to talk about now is your journey from when you finished your TEFL until where you are now. And I'm probably going to interrupt you many times in between your story, but I really want to let people know how much TEFL is just a gateway for like opportunity. And like, I'm going to presume that where you are now is never where you imagined you would be, doing something you never imagined that you would do. The same as for me. Like, I left to go traveling for 6 months, and it's been nearly 15 years. Like, that's insane. I did the math the other day and I was like, wow. And like now, like I'm a digital nomad, I'm living in Bali. Like there's just all of this stuff that's happened that I just didn't see coming. And I have my own business and I'm an entrepreneur. So tell us about your story and how you think TEFL was the catalyst for that.
So my TEFL journey was, I think, a bit unconventional. I was building a career in higher education, and the pandemic really burnt me out. And so when I decided to jump ship, it was right towards the end of the pandemic, and my plan was to get a teaching job and teach for at least a year. But that did not go according to plan, as you may know, Georgie. And
When
I
does it
ended up
ever?
getting, I know, I ended up getting a job where I taught, I think, in about 26 different schools across the greater Jakarta area in every single grade from K through 12. There was no lesson plans. Every single day I woke up, I had no idea who I was teaching, what I was teaching, where I was teaching.
By
And
lesson plans, you mean, so obviously the lesson plans are what you would do, but you weren't told like the topic, the materials, like etc. It was just like, just go.
nothing. I had to wing it every single day. And it was extremely challenging, but I think it built resilience in me that I now carry to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, if I can get through something like that, where I didn't have my passport, I was really concerned about where my passport was. This guy was kind of paying me cash under the table. It was a really like maybe not great situation. It wasn't that conventional transition from a TEFL training into a teaching job.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say
so,
that's not normal. That's not what normally
yeah,
happens.
no. And so, it was just kind of like every day I'm waking up, all right, what do we do today? What do we do today? And at the end of all of this, I had realized that this guy was probably running a scam, which I don't want to encourage people to try and go under, but I would probably say to avoid certain situations like this, that we want to research more into the company that you're being hired by, and especially the person you're being hired by, and see, what other people have to say about them, and maybe don't ignore all the red flags that I ignored. But yeah,
Do
so
you
two
think
and a
at the
half months.
time, so just jumping on that, do you think at the time you knew they were red flags, but you were like, I just need a job? Or is that only in hindsight that you knew they were red flags?
I think a little bit of both, because I this was my first English teaching job abroad. I had taught English at my university as like an intern when I was working there, and but it wasn't like a traditional teaching job in the sense that I was hired. It was just through the department head, and they were allowing me to do internship work and help out with them. So it was cool to be able to have my own classes, but it wasn't that traditional like pipeline of you're getting your TEFL certificate and then you're getting a teaching job. So this is my first experience ever in going into a position like this. And so I kind of had to rely on, my what my gut said. And unfortunately, the red flags that did come up, that in hindsight, it was kind of like I'm texting this guy and he's hiring me through WhatsApp, and I'm like, okay, there's no like real portal or anything like that. And then on the first day, the location that he told me where the center was wasn't actually that location, and then the center was empty and nobody knew that I was supposed to be there on my first day, and it was really weird. And so I just kind of blew past all those because I had already gotten the job, and I was like, all right, I might as well, mess around and find out. I not only that, but I was kind of in a rush to try and get a job. So I had gotten this job. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, might as well stick it out and see what happens. But yeah, I hindsight being 2020 as it always is, I think it's better to have to wait and have multiple offers come in so that you have something to choose from, and not have that sort of like scarcity mindset, rather
Yeah.
than being so eager and quick to jump into something that might not be the best fit for you. And that goes for every single job that I have from here on out. It's instead of approaching it as, well, it's such an honor for me to have this job, it's more of it's an honor for them to have me as a teacher, or have me in whatever position you apply for, rather than trying to come at it from the angle of, I just need a job, I need to get through this interview,
Yeah.
and I need them to hire me as fast as possible. So
I think
that's
that's a
where
big
I
thing
kind of,
that I learned because I'm an opportunist, right? I see an opportunity,
yeah,
I take it, and it's great. But because I'm an opportunist, sometimes I get into this mindset of like, it's an opportunity, and if you don't take it, then it's gone forever. And so learning like, no, it's an opportunity, great, but if you don't take this one, there will be more. And so that's a
yeah,
major thing that I've learned as well. And I think traveling helps you realize like how much opportunity there is in the world, like how many jobs there are, how many people there are, how much possibility there is to network. And as long as you don't close yourself off as this is the only option with anything in life, then the possibilities are, like, it sounds so cliche, but they are endless.
yeah, it's true. It's really true. And that's kind of what brought me to what I'm doing now. After I taught with this company for 2.5, 3 months or so, I thought, well, I actually ended up getting a different job with a different company. And it ended up that the person I was working for wouldn't allow me to change the sponsorship on my Indonesian work visa. And so he wanted me to pay him the amount of my work visa, which he claimed was like $1,800 or something. And oh, it's terrible. I withdrew every cent out of my bank account. I showed him the zeros on my bank account at the immigration office. He was like there at the ATM machine watching me withdraw all of my money. And I came up, I think, like $52 short because I wanted this job. I wanted this job in Indonesia that I had gotten after I had quit his position. And he still wouldn't do it after I came up with $52 short. So I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. And I was just kind of in this point of despair where I felt like all of my teaching English dreams had come to an end. I couldn't teach English in Indonesia anymore if he wasn't going to take this money. Everything just kind of fell apart for me, and I had to really take a long hard look at what I wanted to do with my life. It forced me to slow down, and it forced me to look at a different opportunity I hadn't ever considered, that I had told myself I couldn't do. And I I was thinking about it, and I took about 2 months off. I went and spent all the money that he gave me under the table over in Bali over the course of like not November, like December, January ish. And I was going to go to Vietnam with the intention of going and seeing another person that I had trained with at your course, who was teaching in Saigon, and see about maybe getting a Vietnamese teaching English job. And so went up there, I talked to him for a little while, and just the thought of getting back into a classroom was like traumatizing for me for some reason at the time. And so I was like, okay, well, if we can't teach English, or if we can't teach, then what are we going to do? Well, that started this kind of upward spiral, I would say. I don't know if it's a downward spiral, but an upward spiral of trying to figure out what it is that I want from life, and trying to figure out, if I had an ideal situation, what would it be? And that led me to digital nomadism. And I thought, what sort of skill set do I have that I can use to make being a digital nomad work? And that ended up that landed me in marketing and copywriting. And I found a great program that helped me build my business alongside the skill set of copywriting. And I just kind of went with it. After I made the decision that I'm not going to be teaching anymore, it was pretty much 2 weeks after that I had decided to start building a business for a digital marketing agency to try and see if I can sustain myself as a digital nomad in that space. And it worked. I'm still kind of doing the digital nomad thing, although I'm not traveling as much anymore. But let's see, that was November 2022. And I started this like January-ish 23, like, well, I was thinking about it in December 22. And then, yeah, I started this in January 2023. I spent about 2 months. So I told myself I was going to give myself 2 countries until I got to Cambodia, where the center for the training course that I did in Indonesia actually was the like headquarters for the training course. And once I built the business and I got the training that I needed, went through the course, did everything I needed to do, and I was finally ready to acquire my first client. Actually, it ended up being the company that I did my first training course through, which was really cool, because had I not had that training course, had I not gone through this experience, I wouldn't have been able to then turn around and have them as my first client, and all
So
of the knowledge that I
your
just
first
got.
client, sorry, your first client was the TEFL provider that you did your TEFL with?
Yeah, and it's crazy because had I not just been through all of that, I would not have been able to write educational marketing material for the people that are going into that training course. And I got really lucky because I was just fresh out of the training course almost, and so I had that fresh perspective that I was able to write copy for them. And I think it made them quite a bit of money. I don't know. I think it worked out really well. They seem to be pretty happy with it. So yeah, and then after that, you just keep going and keep acquiring clients. And right now,
and you weren't so you weren't just freelancing, right? You actually started your own agency, working for multiple people, offering, what kind of services were you offering?
so at first, it just started off with copywriting. So I was just writing like blogs, I was writing landing pages, product descriptions, stuff like that. Basically, the words that you would read if somebody was trying to sell you something, whether it's a course or a pair of earphones, whatever it was. It's the writing that went along with it. And then I realized I had previous experience in web design and graphic design and photography. And so it just kind of a no-brainer for me to offer a comprehensive package to my clients rather than just writing. And so it grew from just writing to graphic design, web design, photography, all of the above. And that's where I'm at now. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. So would you say that you're living like a dream life, or that you're where you want to be? You don't
I don't
have
think
to.
I'm necessarily where I want to be. I'm working towards it, but this
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, a much better life that I've built for myself now
Mm-hmm.
than had I stuck with the company that I was with originally. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I'm on my way, but I don't know if I'll ever be satisfied is my problem.
That's everybody's problem. And what so obviously you've been through a bit of a journey. It started with teaching English. It's ended up with you, having your own marketing agency, being able to be a digital nomad, and living a life that you've created for yourself. Would you do it again after all of the stuff that you went through? And obviously it wasn't all plain sailing.
Because of where I'm at now, and because of even though I went through hardship, and even though I went through one of the rare occurrences that happens when people go to teach English as a second language abroad, even though I did experience things that were not the greatest experience, I think I would actually, because a lot of the things that I learned during those times, especially during the tough times, is what helped me build the resilience and the confidence that I have now to be able to keep going. I don't think had I not gone through those experiences that I would be able to have the business that I do now, that I would be able to have the confidence in acquiring clients that I do now. And so it's the experience, I think, in itself, although it was somewhat of a not great experience. I think that is the best thing that could have happened to me to be able to get me where I am now. Otherwise I would have probably gone and gotten back in another mediocre job, sitting at another mediocre desk with another mediocre boss. And so, not to say that my bosses previously were mediocre, I actually really love them, but it just wasn't for me. And so, I think had I not had that experience, I probably would have just given up rather than pursue what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to pursue. So, yeah.
And what do you think? So if there's anyone out there that, wants to be a digital nomad, wants to travel more, wants to work remotely, wants to quit the 9 to 5, would you say that TEFL is like a good option for them if they feel like they don't currently have the skills they need to work online, even if they're not sure about teaching?
100%. Yeah. Because TEFL can be a lifelong career, but it can also be a stepping stone. And that's more or less what I used my TEFL certificate as, and my experience teaching as, was something to launch me into another thing that was beyond that. And so, you know, it's not necessarily the end all be all, but for me, it was something that put me in a place, in a position to get to the life that I really did want to live. And in a way, it also gave me the courage to actually go and do the thing that I had been really scared about doing. And so, yeah, I don't think that, if people don't have teaching experience, or if they're scared about living abroad, or they've always had this dream, I think TEFL is one of the best opportunities to help people transition into living abroad, because it's not just about the job, it's also about the cultural exchange that you get. It's also about building the confidence. It's also about building that peace within you that helps you realize that anything is possible. And that, for me, was a great pipeline, essentially, to be able to get launched into this world of digital nomadism that I don't think, had I not had my TEFL experience, I don't think I would have ever done it. So, for sure.
That's
100%.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Char. It's been amazing talking to you as usual, and good luck with all of your business and everything else that you go on to do.
Thank you, Georgie.
You're welcome. I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
See you later. Bye.